Welcome to Tickets to Travel, the only podcast that discusses the business of travel experiences. I'm your host, Mario Bedwine, and in today's episode, we will meet Chief Revenue Officer at Stay22, Frederic Aouad. What is Stay22? Stay22 is an affiliate platform for ticketing, event planning, travel blogging, and travel media. The free-to-use embeddable tech products supercharge affiliate links by increasing commission revenue to its publishers and partners. Frederic will also discuss his career, his passion for leading go-to-market strategies, and how Stay22 managed to get over 1 billion, yes, billion with a B, eyeballs on their product. Keep it right here because Tickets to Travel starts now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tickets to Travel, the podcast that talks about the business of travel experiences. I'm your host, Mario Bedwine. I'm very happy to have my friend, Frederic Aouad, the CRO from Stay22, here with us today. Frederic, welcome to the podcast. We appreciate you making time.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you for having me. Pretty excited about this. I appreciate having the platform to share a little bit of our fun stories.
Yeah, that's exactly why I decided to do this. That there's, you hear a lot of different types of content, but not really specific to travel and entertainment from a business perspective. And so I get these questions all the time. And I said, I'm just going to create it myself, right? I get to talk to friends of mine. We get to talk about the business as it pertains to us rather than trying to fit in or shoehorn some of the content that we run into. Actually, it's funny. We met probably 2018, 2019 at Intix, right?
Yes, I believe my memory is correct. It's actually January 2020 as Intix, which is the International Ticketing Conference. I believe that one was in New York, which is funny because obviously it's ticketing for live events, right? And we're a travel tech company, right? And this is January 2020. Yep. So 2 months before COVID. Exactly. Right. With joy of both industries.
It really did. It really did. So you guys probably had a big lull there, but we should get to that. But I think where we should start really is I want to learn more about your career, what you've done, and then of course, what you really focus on at Stay22. So can you walk me through that? Because what we'd like to do for Tickets to Travels, there's tons of people who want to break into either travel or entertainment ticketing, and they really don't know the path. And, there's a lot of cool companies out there that really do that. And I think you're a great example of someone who's sort of built your career around this and now have ended up at an amazing company.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I'll start with the Stay22, kind of what we do and who we are. If I talk to somebody who is a bit more business oriented, it's really being a content monetization solution. And we do it mainly monetizing travel content, right? So you can think of travel content mainly like an article, about the best beaches in Portugal type of thing, a city guide for Paris. And that's the evident type of travel content. But for example, traveling for a show, a kind of website that talks about live events, right? Yep. Some live events have international pull or even kind of local travel pull. How do we monetize that travel intent? Could be for sports, people who want to go hiking and kind of looking for best places to hike. So, there's many reasons why people travel, right? And if your platform content has an opportunity to incentivize or motivate people to travel, then we're confident we're a solution that could help you kind of not only answer the need of that specific kind of user in a contextual and smart way, but also help you monetize every time we do help that traveler book some travel.
So you guys work with a lot of publishers, it sounds like. Anybody who provides travel content or event content. Obviously, we met at a ticketing conference. So do you also work with ticketing companies as well?
Absolutely. Well, actually, that's where Stay22 kind of started, right? Stay22 started as a kind of an event travel solution, right? And if I give the origin story, which is kind of fun, it's our co-founder, CTO Hamed, right? Who was very young at the time, was 22, 23 years old, I believe. And he was big into esports, Counter-Strike.
Definitely.
Exactly. So he wanted to travel for an esport event, right? Forget where the actual destination. So he goes about looking at, okay, where is the venue I'm inventing the actual destination. Let's say we're in Denver. And he goes about, okay, it's there on Google Map. And then let's see on booking.com, which accommodation. And is to go on Airbnb, Expedia, and he was finding good deals and realized, oh, shoot, this is like 12 miles away from now. So go back, try again, having 18 different tabs open. He's like, why isn't there like some things that could match that, right? That's how he created the first, what was to be in the future, the first Stay22 product, which is an interactive map, right? That functions a little bit like your typical Google interactive map, right? But really surfaces all the accommodation options in the area and showcasing in real time availability and pricing, right? So that was the first product that he developed that turned into Stay22 after that. And that was very contextual again to live events, right? Obviously, single event organizers, festivals, promoters, but also ticketing, right? After purchasing a ticket,
Post sale.
they say, post sale, Taylor Swift type of big event. People do travel quite a bit to go see Taylor Swift now. And hey, if you're traveling, boom, it's there. Helps the users, interactive, helps the actual user experience. And every time there's a transaction, Stay22 makes money, and the ticketing company in this instance would make monch.
Got it. So you do a bit of a revenue share from wherever the traffic is coming from. You do rev share on whatever margin it is on from the hotel side that you book.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The whole business model of Stay22, whether it is the interactive map or all our products, is affiliation, right? So there's zero cost to any of our, what we call our kind of partners. So again, a publisher, an event company, a ticketing company, that sort of thing. There's zero cost to the user. The money gets generated from our suppliers, our brands like Expedia, Booking.com, Hotels.com, Trivago, and so forth, that share a part of the commission that they collect. And then, as you said, we trickle that down to whoever is giving us access to their users.
You brought up Taylor Swift, and that's obviously like a topic of conversation when you start to look at event travel throughout 2023. And of course, she's killing it in Europe as well. Did you guys actually see huge spikes around that particular tour? Or how do you sort of measure or prepare when you start to see these tours coming down the pipeline?
That's a great question, Mario. That's a great question. So with time, we'll become better from a technological point of view to manage that. But yes, there's a lot of big events, right? Usually, yes, it's live music that tends to have that behavior most, but big artists, essentially, as they prepare to go on sale and go start selling their tour, there's a lot of hype pre-it. It's very timely. Hey, the virtual gates online open at that time. There's a queue. And then suddenly, right, same thing for ticketing company, you go from, X amount of users on your servers to multiply that by 20,000, 200,000, right?
Right.
And from a stress test point of view, that's a gigantic challenge. So we lived that, I don't know the artists, like a bunch of them. I mean, all the big ones with some of our bigger ticketing partners. I can think of, the whole event team group in Europe that happened a few times where our servers just weren't ready, all right, for that. Even though we had prepared, it wasn't enough. So it doesn't prevent the on sale from happening. It's just we're not capturing sufficient travel intent. So with time, obviously, we learned, and we just, from a technical point of view, you can have some very scalable a service for servers, right? So it kind of one of the techs that it's spiking, and automatically buys for you more server power and matches that, right? But then the other challenge is technologically cool. Our interactive map, our data can support it, but obviously, how do we fill the map or is content from our API partners that are Booking.com, Expedia, all the brand names that I mentioned.
All of that. Yep. Got it.
Exactly. So their API has to be ready for that, right? And that was a challenge, especially when we were very small. We're like, okay, why would I change? Why would I unthrottle you?
Yep.
Right? And that makes perfect sense. Why would they?
Well, it's also really hard, Frederic, from an entertainment perspective. Like when you see when one of those big tours are coming out, they don't tell anybody, right? They don't. They basically make an announcement. Hey, in a week it's going to be an on sale. So even if you're paying attention, it's really not a whole lot of time to get everything in order from a travel perspective, because you could effectively say, hey, Taylor Swift's coming to New York City. I would love to talk to all of these hotels and secure a room block or do something like that. But it's almost impossible, right? So you need these API partnerships to do that, because they're not going to share that information at all. Yeah, no, that's interesting stuff. I think one thing I wanted to ask you for a while is you told us the origin story of Stay22, but where did the name come from? What does Stay22 mean?
That's another fun story. So when Andrew, which is our Andrew Lockhead, who is our CEO, co-founder with Hammond, when they met up, I think originally this is I always how I put it. This is urban legend, right? So I'm sure they with time they transformed the story a little bit, but so they were looking for a name of the company, right? I don't think it was top of mind how important the name, and the name they wanted was tied to what domain was available online, right? So at first they wanted like stay.com, right? It was like, hey, help people stay. Stay.com was available, but very expensive. Like we cannot afford stay.com. Because there was like a two-man company back then.
Right.
So Hamid was 22 years old when he coded the product. So I think one night he said like, it's going to be Stay22. And that's how the name stuck from there on. So it's as simple and serendipitous as Hamid making a late night decision. We need a domain, we need a name. I was 22 when I coded it, like kind of last year.
Okay.
Hey, 22, let's go.
Okay. So that makes sense though, right? But it stuck and it works and you printed, business cards and have a website and it's like, so I think the business has been pretty successful over the past few years. Like, are there any like top line numbers you could share with the audience as to what your growth has looked like? I mean, obviously there was this lull over 2020 that obviously everyone was affected by, but like you guys have sort of hit this trajectory and I think it's all positive, but it'd be great to hear from your perspective.
No, I feel extremely grateful to be part of this kind of business rocket ship experience. And I'm conscious that I'd like to repeat it in the future. Hopefully I can, but a lot of things need to line up. And not only hard work and talent, right? Sometimes for it to happen, there's more than that. So yes, I mean, to help your audience and us understand the scale, we pre-pandemic, probably when we met at Intix in 2020 in New York, right? We were probably reaching, but I think we've grown about 30x since that time. Right.
Amazing.
So that's a gigantic growth, 30x in terms of our ARR, actual annual recurring revenues.
Right.
And in terms of scale of footprint, we really acquired tremendous amount of traffic. Like at the end of the day, again, it's affiliation model.
Yep.
How much we convert is usually important, but it all starts with how many qualified users we bring to interact with our products, right? And we kind of judge that, and it's an imperfect metric, but how many IPs we reach, right? And we're pacing to reach around 1.5 billion IPs.
Billion, you're a B.
Yes, with a B, which is a very, very, very large number. So now one IP doesn't mean one person. Sure, it's not as simple as that, but the scale has been huge. And it was the story behind how we scale is obviously hard work, scale, but also a bit of luck and timing, right?
Of course.
You mentioned rightfully that 2020 was a very difficult year for us. As I mentioned earlier, we were almost exclusively focused on going to market within the event space as a travel solution. So as everybody can imagine, pandemic, travel and events was like the ultimate intersection, business cemetery.
Right. Business cemetery, like that.
Yeah. So we had to okay, we can either take the approach of go full on hibernation, reduce costs to the bare minimum, and wait for the storm to pass.
Right.
All right. And I have to give it up to Andrew and Hamid, our co-founders. Like this, not the approach they want. That was the safe approach.
Right.
The other approach, like no, you know what? It's going to be what can we do in the rain? All right. What can we do during the storm? And that meant a lot of pivoting. All right. So we tried different segments and we realized early on, okay, travel is depressed. We know that all across, but it's not depressed equally across all the segments.
Okay.
Event travel is the one that's the most depressed.
It's compounded because of obviously you couldn't get into a venue. You couldn't see a show.
Exactly. I mean, gathering with your family was frowned upon, right? So never mind the venue, right? But what was happening? What were the behaviors of travel in the world? Even though people didn't see it as travel, hey, everybody was like, I need to get away from the city. I'm going to rent an Airbnb in the Adirondacks. Right. I'm generalizing, but everybody, go cottage, go hiking, go outdoors, it's safer outdoors, escape. So that's hey, that is travel.
Right.
All right. That is a type of travel. So we started working with kind of outdoor activity platforms, outdoor activity publishers about best places to hike, best places to surf, to go do something. And And obviously they were seeing a gigantic surge of traffic like they've never seen before. Right. Often they were kind of mom and pop, and some of them were more enterprise, but they were not like, they were either side gig type of kind of websites or solopreneur, small team. And suddenly like, wow, traffic is here. How do I monetize? We're a great solution for that. Again, very location based, right? Where to go hide. The map worked well. So that helped us really kind of survive and grow, but not tremendously fast, right? What happened is I realized that the map is cool, offers a nice UX benefit and drives revenues, but that's credit to Hamid. It's not the optimal way to capture user intent because people need to see the map, interact with the map, and perhaps they just do something else. Hamid was very smart in the way he saw it, is that like, hey, what we're going to do is we need to push a accommodation. We chose accommodation because it's really the biggest margin category in travel.
Across the board in online travel, right?
Yeah, that's what's going to make money both to us and to the publisher. So he really built an AI feature that crawls the content on page, understand exactly what we're talking about, what the actual destination is, and then build code to say, we're going to judge, I started very basic, we're going to judge travel intent by how much they interact with text and content and pictures. And if it passes a certain threshold, we're going to showcase it that specific, for example, booking.com kind of listing or Expedia listing, right, of the destination that is referred to on page. And that was a very, how do I put it, simple, cost efficient, and
but high converting
play.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And that changed completely our trajectory. Not only was it a super easy way for the publisher, like, I don't need to build links. Awesome. I don't need to insert iframes manually.
Yeah.
Amazing. I just put the script and it does itself and it converts.
Great.
Keep it coming.
Right.
Keep them coming.
Right. And I get a share of everything. I'm monetizing the traffic that's already here, whether I was ready for it or not. And I've found a pretty good partner to help me figure out the travel side of that. So, wow.
Exactly.
So that's how that's a really inspiring story. So I guess like the lesson here is how do you, how did Andrew and Ahmed and yourself sort of figure out the strategy there? Or did it just sort of fall in your lap? Because there was probably a period of time where like, oh man, we're not going to do anything in the major cities. Did you guys make a concerted effort to be like, okay, well, now we're going to look at outside? Or how did that strategy sort of come about?
It's a great, so I think Andrew, I got to give credit to Andrew. We joke a lot, like chief curiosity officer. He's very much an explorer type of executive. And I'm like the focus guy. He's the vision explorer,
the visionary of the business.
Yeah, he's really good at that. So my early in the pandemic, my thing like, hey, let's try to build for later. Let's reinforce our relationships with bid ticketing so that when the fish come back in, we'll be ready. And we did that, and that would have been some degree of success. But I was like bloggers, other things, it's kind of losing focus. You have the right product, that sort of thing. And it was really Andrew that pulled us in this direction, right? They said like, hey, we need to try it. There's something happening. There's a trend going on. And I don't think it was like, people often think about like grandiose, grand strategy. I don't think there was much of a strategy. It was just like, let's start running on that road. Let's give it a shot, start walking and see where that leads us. And, oh, this is interesting. It's giving us more than we thought it would. Let's invest more resources and work, and sometimes more. And then we just camp it and then realize it. Product with Hamid started getting involved in adding that. We aligned our marketing towards this. We hired substantially more sales and partner success to align that.
Right.
And that's really what strategically drove it, right? Now, how we became so successful from a go-to-market point of view is also a little bit of serendipity, right? Because we had a sales team and we had a partner success team, which is your typical enterprisey type of go-to-market motion. And now suddenly we're attracted by solopreneurs, small, mid-size, even side gig travel content creator. And the standard for content monetization there is self-serve. If you have a question, here's an FAQ page. There's a general email box. Perhaps you'll get an answer in 3 months.
Right.
I'm
You're generous.
exaggerating. Yeah, that's really what it is, right?
Totally.
It's really like it's a self-serve platform, unless you are like an enormous publisher, enormous, right? You don't get a dedicated account manager. And we came in with like human sales efforts. Like somebody wants to talk to me in a Zoom call, right? And they want to help me make more money. And like, hey, they ask questions via our live chat and we get answers in the first like 10 minutes. They thought like, wow, amazing white glove service. So the combination of the good product and the human aspect and the fact that that world of like content creators is very much a community
Totally.
made that like it became viral. Hey guys, we got Stay22 referrals. They just
I don't think people think about that enough. It's really, if you were to encompass everything you're saying, it's really about kindness, being kind in business. I run into this a lot because I talk to a lot of startups and they'll always provide feedback, Frederic. I say, it's been great talking to you. Because if I talk to someone else at a big company, they're sort of in this mode of, you're going to create more work for me. And so I have to sort of figure out what, if I'm going to take on the responsibility of managing you as a smaller business or whatever it might be. And so, no, I think the way you guys handle that made complete sense, because you're right. It turned into everybody was on TikTok, right? Or everybody was on Instagram because they had nothing else better to do. So the traffic was just out of this world. And if you guys came in and provided a solution that could help monetize that traffic, you're going to get those referrals. People are going to be very happy about it. And then you guys are humanizing it and being kind and understanding their situation and really applying a solution that is very unique in that way. So good on you.
I think, thank you. I think as well, in retrospect, I have a hospitality management background. If I grew up professionally, a bunch of our staff back then had the same type of background, or maybe restaurants as well. And that service component is so key in that world, right? And it's ingrained in me and in us, right? To have that, hey, like, the experience, yes, the product is super important, like the hotel at the end of the day, or our own Stay22 product. Don't get me wrong, like without that, there's nothing, right?
Right.
But the whole experience, the product is part of it, but not all of it, right? And you can do a lot to have a good product, but turn into a great experience with the humans you actually interact with, right? And I think instinctively, when we saw that, we were talking to slowpreneurs they appreciated that sort of thing. It compounded for us. Wow, awesome. We're making a change in people's lives. Instead of doing X amount of dollars per month in their side gig, now we've 3x'd it and they're doing it full time. That's their full time gig, right? Like, and that's very valuable. And it's not like company XYZ. It's Jim, right? Yeah. It's Jim travels the world, right? So that very human service component, I think, from the hospitality world helped a whole lot.
The Tickets to Travel podcast is always brought to you by Expo Travel. Expo Travel is Experiences Optimized Travel, assisting B2B startups and companies with business development in online travel and entertainment ticketing distribution. If your company is looking for ways to boost revenue, increase average order values, or activate your member base with either travel or entertainment ticketing, contact the team at Expo Travel for a consultation today. Visit xpotravel.com. That's xpotravel.com for more information.
No, totally. I mean, and I want to get into that a bit about your background, because I think that's really important to kind of where you're at now and how your hospitality background contributes to the overall strategy in a lot of ways. But I think especially when we go back to, you guys work with a lot of ticketing and entertainment publishers, that, I always had this conversation where it's a different situation when you're in entertainment or ticketing, because you're providing a fan experience. You're trying to sell an experience to a fan. And once that ticket is sold, you pretty much leave it to the artist or the venue to entertain that fan. Now, if you bring in a hotel room, that fan experience becomes a guest experience. And as you know, it's harder. It's harder to manage. You have to have a great booking experience, have a fantastic check-in. The stay has to be amazing. And heck, even if they had a horrible, breakfast one morning, they're still going to put it on TripAdvisor, right? So you've actually helped entertainment ticketers who are typically looking at marketing and selling to a fan and converting them into a guest and really kind of taking care of that. And I think you guys have been very effective in doing that. And that's one of the sweet spots, I think, with a lot of the companies and people who I speak to are trying to merge travel and entertainment together, is that trying to convince an entertainment entity that it is a guest experience at the end of the day, once you start to put in a hotel room.
Absolutely.
It's tough for them. It's tough for those guys to understand it. But secondly, you have to be very good at what you do in terms of managing that booking and dealing with those third-party API partners and such, and making sure the booking flow looks great. And if there's a refund or a chargeback, whatever it is, you're taking care of that too. So I think that's something that's still in this like gray area for a lot of the demand
Absolutely.
that comes through from an event provider or a ticket.
Absolutely. So that's something that often super interesting subject matter. I think there's two aspects to what you just said that kind of boggles my mind. And I'm generalizing because obviously, the live entertainment industry is very large and there's many different types of opinions there. But I too often feel that there's a perception that the fan experience starts and stops at the doors of the venue, which is like, when you think of like, and even if you're not traveling, like they said, like the silliest, like I don't understand, like if I want to go see a show, who do I go?
Right.
Like even all that stuff, where do I park? Do I eat before and after? Am I traveling for, like there's probably, I'm inventing a number, 30 to 40% of your enjoyment or quality of your experience will be things that happen outside the venue.
Right.
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 And ignoring that, I find it is a big, they don't really ignore it. They know that parking is a huge struggle for in like city center kind of venues. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
But to say that to not try to find ways to facilitate that is in my opinion, mind boggling.
Right. You question whether or not they care. Right. Like,
Correct.
Because that's what it comes out with, like, especially when you come to a ticketing company, right? Like I sold the ticket, it goes in the report, we get credit for it. Now it's the venue who has to deal with the concessions, with the parking and all this stuff. And so there really isn't a whole lot of businesses out there that sort of streamline all of it and can provide the type of feedback to really create loyalty, right? So I think that's part of the reason why I'm having talks like this, is to really kind of find what's the perfect event travel solution, where I think it's really, obviously you guys are one piece of that, but like finding that sort of partnership with a venue or a ticketing company as well to say, hey, you know what, we want to go past just selling the ticket. We want to
absolutely
make sure we're collecting data, right, on what that guest does or that fan does, but also merging that with that entire experience, because they may come in 2 days earlier to that before the concert or before the show, or stay, a few days later and who knows, do a tour of the city or do something like that, and just trying to connect the entire trip. But what I find now, and part of the reason why we're doing this, is that the event itself, and you guys have benefited from this, drives the demand for the travel.
Yes. That's the shift. I say I started even pre-pandemic.
Yes.
Right. And it's not complete, obviously, it's never be complete, but in the sense that there's destination-based travel. So basically, I want to go to France because I'd like to visit France, right? And that has been the legacy type of travel motivator, right? Destination. And then we've seen for the past kind of 10 years, a very sizable but consistent growth of experience-based travel, which is, I want to go see Taylor Swift.
Yes.
But it's sold out or the prices are ludicrous in my city. But hey, I'm inventing. If I see she's going to Poland and it's super cheap in Poland, actually, me going to fly to Poland, everything is pretty much the same price.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
exactly. Probably cheaper in some ways, but you get an experience out of it. Right.
Exactly. But that's the thing. But that's like the new thing to think about Taylor Swift. But you think of, I love to do surfing, right? Where can I do new surfing spots? That's 100% experience-based stuff. Like the destination is important, but secondary to, is there surf?
Yes.
Right? Or is there hiking or climbing or whatever?
Right. From an event perspective, I think Taylor Swift definitely helped that, but I looked at the Oxford Economic Forum. They do a study on this. And essentially, what you'll get out of this 100-page deck is that any event from the beginning of time, essentially, at least 25%, if it's a larger music event, sporting event, 25% of that audience who purchased a ticket is traveling at least 100 miles. And so you have a really good opportunity there to attach travel to that and do certain things. And so COVID just sort of exacerbated that, because then it became, you know what, inflation and everything is so expensive now, but I still want to go to this festival or I want to go see Taylor. And then the ticket is what you have to get into the party first is what I tell people.
Yeah.
You got to get to the party first.
Top funnel,
right?
The first part is the ticket, and that changes things a whole lot from a
completely
business opportunity point of view.
Right. When you think about it, fast forward, or sorry, you rewind back 20 years, like when we were going to concerts all the time and stuff, there was no Airbnb, Frederic. You know what I mean? So a lot of, depending on what the money level is in terms of buying the ticket, they're like, where am I going to crash afterwards? I got the ticket to Taylor, I'm going to that festival. Where am I going to stay now? And now there's just so much more options out there versus like just going to a major OTA where you can't buy a concert or sporting ticket just yet, right? So
Correct.
So you're definitely shifting, and I think that Gen Z in particular is really about the experience, and you know they're going to be the ones with all the buying power in travel, you know, going forward.
Right. Well, you think so? Yes, exactly. It's the kind of domino effect of what is the first reason why you're traveling, right? If you think of OTAs, right, like generally, like book flight first and destination, book flight, then hotel, then car rental if you're looking for, then look at activities and restaurants.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And obviously, whoever owns the flight transaction has a lot of cross sell opportunities, kind of possible. But now, you know, come for the experienced one, it's all flipped up. So basically, if buying your Taylor Swift ticket is the trigger to we're going or not.
Yes.
Right. So offering accommodation right after makes tons of sense. Offering flights if it's a flying thing or bus or train, whatever it is. Right. Other activities, restaurants, like everything's a domino from that, which is completely upside down of what your full online travel agencies are, like the Expedias that do flights, that sort of thing. So, something they must be watching.
I talk about this in other episodes as well, Frederic, but like so 20 years ago when I was at Expedia, you know, they used the website as a grocery store example, right? So that's where the concept of a shopping cart came in too, because the retail store is there.
I like it.
And then the air was the eggs and the milk, which is always at the back of the grocery store. So
you have to navigate.
Right. So then as you pick up your eggs and milk, which is your air, you got to book the flight first. And then as you're coming back to the checkout counter, I got to pick up some cereal. I got to pick up some cheese. I got to pick up the hotels, rental car. And you start to build that trip. So that used to be the case. But now, you know, none of those guys can really just take that website and flip it over and say, Taylor Swift ticket, where is she going to be? And let me add the flight. Let me do this. And I think it's just a matter of technology and the evolution. And you know, a lot of people think, you know, OTAs are the end all be all, but like it's been 20 years, man. You know, it's been
a while. It's been a while.
And
it's true.
So there's new ways to do it. And you guys are a good example of that. Stay22 is a good example of that, where you're benefiting from the ticket first demand and then applying hotel bookings or giving that fan or guest an opportunity to book hotels from that initial demand, which I think is brilliant.
Correct. No, spot on.
So yeah, no, great conversation so far. So this is why I like doing this, because not many people are in the spaces, right, to understand these different pieces. But let's talk about your career. You mentioned you were in hospital. Were you a hotel guy before?
Yes, my professional career, really my serious one, started in hotels. The funny enough is that, like, again, serendipitous start. Like, I was a security guard at at a hotel as I was during the nights, as I was technically studying during the day. So you can imagine sometimes some things had to go. But and when I finished my bachelor's, the general manager offered me a role as a sales coordinator in a hotel, which was the Meridian brand, part of Starwood.
Yes.
Which doesn't exist anymore, which was bought by Marriott, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, something like that. So yes, I grew up hotel sales, did a bunch of hotel brands, and then moved to what was a startup back then called Corporate Stays.
Okay.
Which is, from a consumer value point of view, like Airbnb, but really for business.
Okay.
But from a business model point of view, think more like Sonder. Founders.
Right. Yeah.
Before they bought hotels. So furnish corporate housing, essentially, furnish rentals, service with it, long or short term. And that was really when that segment was booming. Right. And it was really interesting to be able to shift some of the hotel long stay market share to us. And that's I always have a love for travel, hospitality, and And when Stay22 appeared on the radar, I found it was a really fun way to get a first tech rodeo, if you'd like, but still, using some of my understanding of the travel accommodation ecosystem. And that's going to be 5 years ago in September. So yes, I was a hotel guy to begin with. Absolutely.
So, a lot of people want to understand how to become a CRO at a startup or a company like that. So, what's some advice you could provide to someone who's maybe getting out of school, who within a 5-year span could kind of get to that level, or finding something that is interesting to them? Like, what's some pieces of advice that whether you followed or you heard or which changed your direction? Can you think of any?
That's some really good questions. So if you're fresh out of school, and this is my advice, personal advice. I don't think I'm a specific career coach expert by any means, but if you're fresh out of school, I would recommend you work for perhaps I think you need to get a lot of experience. There's a lot of value in big company because the due process, structure, training, that sort of thing.
Right.
There's also lots of value in a smaller startup in terms of touching many things. But I would, very generic advice, but early on in your career, I say skill acquisition, experience acquisition matters a whole lot, right? You likely will not become CRO of a serious company in the first 5 years of your career. And if you do, all the power to you, right? But just chances are is limited. But then the way I approached joining startups, right, was really for the why. One reason why is I, at the end, could not stand my experience at large brands in terms of the red tape and slow moving reality. Not only, and I love hotels and hospitality, to be clear. I always have a huge
Respect.
yeah, respect, and it's a very human first oriented business, and I love that. But it's a very old industry, right? Having people over to sleep and hosting them is nothing new. And it's a very conservative industry in the way it approaches processes, structure, growth, and that sort of thing.
Right.
At least it was until I left 5-7 years. No, 8.
I think it's still pretty much the same. Yeah. It doesn't change very much.
And new ideas, new ways of doing things was at a point I'm just like a black sheep in this world, and they all want to do same old, and I want to change stuff, and I'm just being annoying.
Right.
Crowd. So somewhere where there's more action, sort of thing. So and impact, right? At the end of the day, I wanted some level of agency and impact on business outcomes, right? And at a higher level than just, hey, we beat budget this quarter. And startups being smaller is somewhere where, if you come in early, a lot of things are rested on your shoulders for all the pros and cons of that. But definitely when you do well and things go well, you have agency and impact. So that's something that if somebody's looking for that type of challenge, because with more power comes more responsibility.
Of course, Spider-Man.
Yep. Exactly. It's all fun and dandy until, you really feel the heat. The other thing is and I did that by mistake, is who you work for in the startup world is extremely important, right? It's always is. Who your direct manager is always important, and something that I've learned, again, by making mistakes. But it's especially true in a small startup, right?
Yes.
Where the individual, the founders, right, will very likely be the end all be all of strategy, direction, culture of the company, right? Which is amazing when you find great human beings like Hamed and Andrew. That's amazing, but terrible when you fall on somebody who your values don't align. That's right. I think they're bad human beings, just they have different values than you.
Exactly.
Right? And that could be pampered in a bigger organization, right? Because they're probably a gigantic HR department, processes, and you might not get along, but there's more HR armor that kind of protects you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The other thing that I recommend is that, if you're joining somewhere, the right people, but finds a product or a service or an environment that not necessarily passion, but that you're not doing it.
Sparks your curiosity, like you said about Andrew. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Totally.
Not exclusively about money, right? Money is important. You join startup to start up.
Right.
Likely you want to grow your career, grow your financial outcomes. And it's a kind of high risk, high reward scenario. We all work for money. I'm not discounting that.
Right.
That's a great way to do a good high risk, high reward bet without going to being a founder, which is the ultimate high risk, high reward
exactly
scenario, right?
Yep.
It's a bit more less risky. But yeah, I think you need to have some degree of interest. Like if you hate insurance, but you feel this is a great growth experience,
Right.
well, good luck. Perhaps you can, I can't, right? Do something that I really have zero interest for.
No, I agree with you, man. I mean, it's just, people, I've done a lot of stuff in my career as well, but it's always been travel and entertainment. Like it's always been in that same path. That's always what's gotten me out of bed and said, hey, I want to figure this out and be part of that change. And I think you've done the same, right? You've stayed in hospitality, but then you found these different pieces of it. So I think that's really good feedback and really good advice to people who are still trying to find their way. It's not so much find the passion, find what you're good at, and then kind of align that with some of the passions so that you're constantly curious and not bored, essentially. I think that's really what you're getting at as well.
You're right. And the last piece of advice is really as an operator, right? In a startup world is, many, many dones is better than one perfect.
Right.
Right. And that's, and the pace of iteration, whether it is for sales, for product, for anything, if you're able to do 8 tasks at 72%, right? That will bring you much, much, much further than doing 4 tasks at 95%. Right.
Yeah.
And that's very different than the hospitality, high-end hotels world where like every guest experience needs to be perfect, that sort of thing.
Right.
That was a big adaptation for me to just like go, go, go. We just need to, the Wayne Gretzky quote, like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Right.
Yeah, take a lot of shots, right? And quantify, learn from them. This worked, this was it. And whatever works, double down, double down, double down, double down.
Right.
Right. Action.
I love that quote because I also think of it on the flip side too. Like I tell my kids a lot of times, like, don't worry, you don't have to be perfect because even Steph Curry misses a free throw every once in a while, right? So you have to not, don't fear any failures. Just keep trying, keep at it, stay focused, and good things will come out of it. And I think networking as well is another piece that comes up quite a bit. Like, because I'm sure, how did you end up meeting Andrew and Hamid?
So funny enough, it was a recruiter. A recruiter hit me up and I didn't know her and from my left field. I saw your profile, blah, blah, blah. I think it was LinkedIn. So if in case it's not clear yet, I do recommend that you have a really tight LinkedIn game. It is essentially your curriculum, your CV, your electronic business card.
That's right.
That's the reality. And yeah, like she spoke about the company. I'll be honest, at first I wasn't very excited. Yeah. Right. The full transparency, the compensation, like, meh, like we're going back here. Then I thought the production, okay, this is interesting. And Andrew will tell you our first meetup wasn't the greatest synergy. He asked all those typical with time, like I absolutely love Andrew, was like these questions like, if you would be on an abandoned island, right? What would you bring? What are the items you bring?
Right.
So like these types of HRE questions, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, but I like the product. I wanted to go into tech and like, okay, I found his first to be silly, but he seemed like a genuine guy, cool. Simon that I've met was a COO. I met Andrew as well. So you know what? I want to try tech. Let's give this a shot, right? So that's really how it happened. And then, 5 months later, pandemic. So I make a choice to come. Am I sticking around? Are they keeping me, right? Because even though I had not a gigantic compensation, which was very good compensation. Sure, I think it was a step back from where I was. I'm not saying I was badly paid.
Yeah.
But it was expensive for the startup that it was. And they kept me along for the pandemic and the kind of the rest is history. I think the pandemic was, you often see people's true colors either when they win a lot or when they lose a lot. Right. So we've been winning a lot. There's still Andrew Hamid founders are still the same guys with the right values. We've lost a lot of the pandemic. A lot of incentive to be a bit more sharky. They were not for no reason. So I feel very, very grateful to that part of the rocket ship.
Which I think is ultimately where all of us need to be, is just be grateful for the positions that we're in. So, one thing that I always like to discuss as well, you've been obviously in this industry for a long time, and what would be, and you just got back from a major trip over the summer too. So I always ask the guests, what if there was no budget, no problem with money, what is the perfect travel experience for yourself? And I think of it as it's a ticket to somewhere, a certain destination. What if you could just draw it up for you personally? What do you think? What would be the
So
perfect
I'm going to
travel
be
experience?
left field. I'm going to be left field because of my weird passions, right? So assuming, for example, I can bring all the kids along and school is not a question, right? Like the dream thing, right?
Yep.
So I'm a big Brazilian jiu-jitsu fan and grappling guy. I've done that for the past 15 years, the judo before, box, that sort of thing. So
Hey.
I think I would travel to tons of different Brazilian jiu-jitsu tournaments, compete there, train at other schools, bring the family, discover the place. So yeah, I would do like a year-long tour of Fred and the family traveling across the world, discovering new places, new cultures, new Brazilian jiu-jitsu gyms, and a little bit of discomfort by having like kind of a competition at each of this destination.
Have you been to Brazil?
I've not been to Brazil yet,
So that would be like
I need to do it.
number one, right? Going to Rio.
That would be number one, Sao Paulo. Yeah, I would go to Rio. I would go to Rio to where it all started. Yes.
Do you study the Gracie forms?
Yeah, basically. Well, I started with the Gracie Barra, which is kind of the most known Gracie Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu thing. But yeah. I mean, the sport evolved so much. But
Totally. So Brazil. What other destinations?
I would definitely do Japan.
Oh.
Japan's an absolute must, right? For the judo, jiu-jitsu type of thing. That's a must. I'll definitely do Asian countries. Difficult politically, but I would like to do Russia as well.
Right.
Because of all those countries that have a very big heritage of combat sports.
Right.
I'd like to do. I'd like to see how they approach it, that sort of thing.
Amazing.
But yeah, Brazil,
I didn't see that one
Japan.
coming, Fred. I didn't see that one coming. That's awesome. That's great. And so you were also in France last month or over the last couple months. I would be remiss if I did not ask you what the best part of that trip was for you. Best hotel, best destination.
Okay, great question. So I go to France very often, okay, because my wife is from France, right? So I obviously Paris is amazing, right? But especially if you don't work there and you can afford to be in the city,
right?
Which is like all major gigantic city, which is not very realistic for most of us, right?
Right.
But I'm going to go outside the beaten path, right? There is a mountainous range called Les Cévennes,
Okay.
France. This is southeast, just north of Montpellier. And it's a very, very low density, not like Alp mountainous regions, very particular type of culture because, I can't say the, anyways, they're not Catholics there. Mainly it's Protestants. Protestants. Thank you. Sorry. Protestants, which is very interesting in France. It's really rare to see that in France. And you know, there's the lots of small villages. The scenery is amazing. And it's really that backcountry hidden part of France. There's little tourists that go there. Whether doing the fresh produce market is an absolute joy there because it's everything cheese, dry sausage. It's so cheap and so good.
Yeah.
Right. And every piece of food has a story. Right. There's a story behind it all. The pace of those small towns is amazing.
Yes.
If you want to do hiking, it's hiking aplenty. Honestly, I could just pick up the car and drive in small roads and you can make a full-on Instagram account of the amazing scenery and pictures that you have there.
I'm sure you had lots of nice photos from that trip. Amazing.
So that for me was the highlight.
Fantastic, man. Well, you know what? Thank you so much for your time. We're coming here to the end of our hour together. I really appreciate your insights, feedback on travel experiences and what Stay22 can do. Obviously, people can find you on LinkedIn, as we mentioned earlier, or can check out www.stay22.com for more information. But thank you again, Fred. I appreciate the time.
Mario, thank you.
The Tickets to Travel podcast is always brought to you by Expo Travel. Expo Travel is Experiences Optimized Travel, assisting B2B startups and companies with business development in online travel and entertainment ticketing distribution. If your company is looking for ways to boost revenue, increase average order values, or activate your member base with either travel or entertainment ticketing, contact the team at Expo Travel for a consultation today. Visit xpotravel.com. That's xpotravel.com for more information.